The 2019 season comes to an end in the playoffs, on the road. That story, the same for both the Timbers and the Thorns, who each now enter the offseason and begin to focus on 2020. This is the season finale of Timbers in 30, and here to debrief and assess the status of both squads is the owner and CEO of the Portland Timbers and Thorns, Merritt Paulson. He's our guest on the final Timbers in 30 of 2019, which starts right now.
This is Timbers in 30, presented by AT&T.
Welcome to Timbers in 30. I'm Jake Sivan. A season that, for many reasons, was a difficult and eventful one, ended for the Portland Timbers in the first round of the Western Conference playoffs with a 2-1 loss at Real Salt Lake. Now, normally, Timbers president of soccer Gavin Wilkinson is our guest on the final show of the season, but he is away on a scouting trip. So filling in so kindly is the owner and CEO of the Timbers and Thorns, Merritt Paulson. Merritt, thanks for coming in.
Happy to be here.
Let's start just kind of big picture. I mentioned 2019 was a difficult one. There were so many challenges on and off the field. How have you assessed and processed the past season?
Well, I mean, look, it was painful watching the Seattle Salt Lake game last night. We gave Seattle a gift. We really did. You know, there's all due respect to Salt Lake. We're the better team, and we had a lot of success against Seattle in the playoffs. And you know, but we put ourselves in a position where we were on the road, and there's a lot of crazy elements in that game, and you know, you can't even make it up. I mean, the wind was in our face in the first half with the rain, and then at halftime it started snowing and the wind died. But at the end of the day, it was a bizarre season, and it wasn't all negative. There were some highs in there, but I can't remember a season where we've had so much adversity. Some of it was public, some of it was not public, and credit to the coaches and Gio and everybody for keeping things, you know, in-house that should be kept in-house. But we had a lot of adversity all through this season, and ultimately we didn't achieve the goals we had. You know, I think we made some changes after our MLS, our run to MLS Cup last year that put the team, we thought, in a better position to exceed what we did last year and win the league, and we fell short of those goals. But at the same time, I got to tell you, I'm pleased with the job that Gio did, that the coaches did. I've got no issues or questions with tactical decisions made down the stretch. Again, I've got a full perspective on everything happening. I think we're in good hands, and ultimately, you know, I think we're going to be in good shape going forward.
A lot of interest, obviously, surrounding Diego Valeri around the league with supporters regarding his contract. What's the latest with Diego Valeri?
Well, first and foremost, we want Diego back. I want him back. I've told him I want him back. Gio wants him back. Gavin wants him back. He, along with Diego Chara, has really been, you know, those guys have been the faces of this franchise. They both should retire Portland Timbers. Mm-hmm. So, you know, we've also got an offer on the table to bring him back that you know, is pretty similar to his current situation. It's a multi-year offer. He's been the highest paid player on this team for his entire career, dating back to 2013 when he's been here. Mm-hmm. But you know, we also have to work within the realities of the MLS cap structure, and it's important that we do have flexibility, and we have flexibility with the DP spot. But I'm cautiously optimistic. At the same time, I want him to be happy, and he's got to do what's best for him and his family. And you know, but I'd love to see him back here.
Along that lines of being happy, Brian Fernandez, how is Brian doing? What are the next steps with Brian?
Well, look, I mean, everybody saw, you know, and for those who watched Brian when he was at Necaxa and Liga MX to, you know, his first month and a half or so, I mean, he was in Portland and he was himself. What an electric player this guy is. I mean, he's a different level type of difference maker. You know, he had some challenges. He's obviously in the SABH program. Right now I'm limited in what I can say. First and foremost, we want him to become himself again, to get better. And, you know, hopefully that can happen, and hopefully he can be, you know, part of this club next year.
This season was one that kind of started a new era for the Portland Timbers with the reopening of Providence Park. It seems like a long time ago now, back to June 1st. now that you've had 17 Timbers games and half a schedule of Thorns games, and 2 games played in the new Providence Park, how do you assess how that went?
Well, I said we had some highs and lows. One of the highs is off the field, right? Both the Timbers and the Thorns are among the 10 best attended clubs in the United States and Canada throughout the duration of the 2019 season. That's amazing. And it was. I talked about challenges and adversity. I mean, you brought up Ryan. That was certainly one thing. But stadium, the scheduling was presented its own share of issues. But at the end of the day, we've got a very special home. We had a lot of stacking, as they call it in the industry, in the second half of the year. It creates fatigue, with fans as well, with all those home games bunched up together. And so I don't think we ever really saw, the best of the atmosphere that we're going to have, in our new home. But in 2019, but I do think the stadium special, our renewal rates were terrific. Coming out of that process right now, our TV ratings were terrific for the season. Local TV ratings, highest they've ever been. So, we're building our audience, and we made a big investment in the stadium, and I think ultimately we still got to work some things out and little things here and there, but I'm really, really pleased with how it turned out. And I'm looking forward to a regular season next year with more of a regular rhythm.
Well, when we talk about next year, what is the focus for yourself, for the club going into 2020?
All right, so let me be clear. Gavin is on a plane as I speak with Gio to Europe to look at a player. This is normally his piece. So he's going to be doing press conference with Gio next week, media availability. So, but certainly I was speaking both as the owner and him on your initial question about Diego. But I'll go through what I think his perspective is and the coach's perspective right now. First of all, you got to understand there's a lot of uncertainty in any offseason, let alone where you've got 2 expansion clubs coming in with expansion drafts. We don't really know how the salary cap is going to look in 2020. Right. So, there's a number of things, and like anything else, things can change. But just starting from the back to the front, the positions where they're looking to add, we've already got terms basically agreed to with the young, promising outside back or right back. We will add, plans are to add a central defender. We probably will add a center midfielder. And I think moving to the attack, we need a productive winger, a right winger likely, scoring threat. And then we're really thin at the forward position, with or without Brian right now. And Jabo had a great year. And one of the bright spots, and not singling him out. Obviously, a lot of other player bright spots throughout the season, but we'll add a forward as well.
Elsewhere, kind of in the Timbers pyramid, the structure, T2 and the academy, as you look forward and assess that, what's on your mind with those?
We've got exciting news with T2 coming up next week. So I don't want to, drop to take away from the press conference that we'll be holding, but there's some changes going on there, which are great. And then the academy, there's been a real shift. I was semi-negative on the academy and certainly the investment and what we had. We've really got a great crop of players that we're all excited about right now. The coaches and staff are doing a terrific job. We may be adding to that staff as well, but some positive things going on with our academy, which we're all excited about, and how the academy is working with T2 and the first team as well. It's a really cohesive unit all the way through.
We're going to go to break now, but Merritt's going to stick around. You guys should stick around as well. We're going to shift our focus when we come back to talking about the Portland Thorns, whose season also ended this weekend in the playoffs. We'll get Merritt's thoughts on the Thorns when we come back. And later on in the show, Ross and Timbers.com writer Richard Farley will look towards 2020 from a league-wide perspective on the breakaway. It is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and the Portland Timbers have teamed up with their friends at Dutch Bros Coffee to help raise awareness and support the #BeAware campaign. Visit your local Portland Timbers team store or shop.dutchbros.com to purchase your special training jersey and to help raise funds to support breast cancer research, and join them in supporting this campaign in hopes of finding a cure.
Now back to Timbers and 30, presented by AT&T.
Welcome back to Timbers and 30. Timbers and Thorns CEO Merritt Paulson is still with us. Merritt, let's talk about the Thorns. They lost in the NWSL semifinal in Chicago on Sunday, just about 18 hours between the Timbers' loss and their loss. What did you make of the Thorns season?
Let me start off the field. I mentioned it in the Timbers segment, but look, on the positive note, the fact that we were able to average over 20,000 fans at a game for the entire 2019 season is nothing short of spectacular. It's terrific for the NWSL, it's terrific for women's professional soccer, and it's terrific for women's sport and you know, I mean, gender equity and all the other things we're talking about. I mean, this is a relevant club, and it's all the things we talk about that women's sports can be. You know, in some ways it's embodied by the Portland Thorns, and I couldn't be more proud of the support we have here. You know, this isn't something we're doing just for young girls as an aspirational thing. It's everybody. It's all fans, young boys, men, women, everybody. And it's a terrific, high caliber professional soccer experience product. And so I'm really proud of that, first and foremost. Look, it was a disappointing year for the Thorns. There's no way to shade that in any other different color. The fact is we've set a high standard for ourselves. The last 3 years under Mark Parsons, we've won an NWSL Cup, we've won a Supporters Shield, and we lost at home in an NWSL championship game. We've got a very, very high bar. I realize in pro sports you're not always going to hit that. That said, this year we have to manage the World Cup in France, and we do so really, really well. We put ourselves in a terrific position with the players coming back, and we've got great talent, a lot of talent on our team, and the players come back, and the team just never looked like itself. It really didn't from that point forward. So there's got to be a lot of introspection, and you know, starting with me and Gavin, coaches, the players. We do have a lot of talent on that team, but we've got to take a hard look and you know, potentially, you know, maybe make some changes. We've got at least one expansion team that's I expect to potentially come in. Yeah. So you know, there may be an expansion draft, may or may not be. Nothing's final yet there, but there'll be some change, and hopefully, you know, we can get back on track and get the team playing like I know it can play. I have a lot of faith in our coaches there as well, but I'm disappointed.
You're touching on the potential of an expansion team. Overall, a big year for NWSL. How encouraged are you about the direction to which the league is going and what you have seen?
It is a big year, and we're working on. You know, we've been a federation, U.S. Soccer Federation managed league. We're making changes to become an owner-managed league. We're looking at adding potentially a new club next year. We just announced Louisville for 2021. I'm not sure when this will air, you know, what will be announced, but I'm optimistic about some changes there. And you know, I just see reports that Vlatko's potentially going to be, you know, helming the national team, which is a superb hire in my estimation. He's one of the best out there on and off the field. So, you know, that's terrific. But I'm optimistic. We need to get the federation to continue to support this league, even though they, you know, won't be managing the league day to day. That's going to be fundamental to our continued success. I also think we're working on ways to pay players more. And to be able to go out and retain and attract better players and maintain our position as the top women's pro league in the world.
Merritt, we appreciate you taking the time to come in on the season finale of Timbers and 30. Have a good off season. Good luck in the off season, and we look forward to seeing what's in store in 2020.
Thank you.
Coming up next, Timbers.com's Richard Farley is with us. It's the final breakaway of the year. We're going to widen our perspective. We're going to look ahead to next season league-wide when we return.
Now back to Timbers and 30, presented by AT&T.
Welcome back for the final breakaway of 2019. Richard Farley from Timbers.com joining us again.
Nice to see you guys.
Nice to see you. By the way, this is the performance of the season for you.
I dressed up for the occasion. I dressed up, guys.
Season finale. We appreciate
Thanks,
that.
guys.
And as we end 2019, let's look to 2020 league-wide. Start off with talking about the second year for coaches. There were a lot of first-year coaches this year in MLS who had an impact, who had an intriguing year. For those guys who are going to be in their second year next year, what's the most interesting situation for you to watch?
Yeah, there were some huge names that came into the league this year, whether it's Frank de Boer or Matias Almeida, but probably the biggest name coming back was Bruce Arena. And I draw back to my memories of being in Los Angeles when he arrived there and what he did to take a legacy franchise that was struggling and make them the premier club in Major League Soccer. The first step for this year for New England really feels the same. And obviously he's talked a lot about getting the organization kind of on his level as far as expectations are concerned. So it's going to be fascinating to see if the crafts follow through. Now, secondly, another coach that I covered in Los Angeles, Robin Fraser. Great, unexpectedly great start with Colorado, even though they were playing well under Connor Casey, one of the most limited teams in Major League Soccer. Will Robin Fraser's lessons from Chivas USA, coaching another limited team, pay off in Colorado?
I think talking about learning lessons, Mark Dos Santos, does he learn the lesson this year where 17 new players that they brought in for him coming into MLS the first time, and they were dreadful, they were woeful. And him talking about an identity shift, and he started to see it at the start of the year, and then they went away from it. They were all over the place. Fans weren't turning out. I can't wait to see what Mark Dos Santos says next year. He was already talking about with a handful of games left. I can't wait for 2020. He was already looking forward to it. We need to change our approach and everything around it. Vancouver need to sort things out because fans aren't turning out and the quality, the product on the pitch hasn't been good.
We're going to have two new teams coming into MLS next year as MLS expands to Nashville with Nashville SC, to Miami, David Beckham's long-awaited franchise, Inter Miami. Richard, when you look at those two teams coming into the league together, what stands out?
What stands out is that it seems to follow a pattern that Major League Soccer has had to accept during this recent round of expansion. You tend to have small markets coming in with big markets. You have Minnesota, you have Cincinnati, but you also have NYCFC, Atlanta, and LAFC that are held up as new cornerstone clubs of this league, while the other teams have a harsher reality. Nashville's going to have a harsher reality. I'm really interested to see how they handle that because there are a lot of different ways to approach it. You see Cincinnati and Minnesota took different approaches, but then Miami, they're going to want to be the marquee team, the new marquee team in this league. They're going to be closer to an Atlanta, they're going to be closer to an LAFC, and they're going to have higher expectations from the start.
I'll just jump onto Nashville real quick with head coach Gary Smith. I think it's a fantastic, fascinating story. Could be the comeback coach story of the year. He's been out of the league 9 years. He won MLS Cup, if you remember, with Colorado Rapids in 2010, made the playoffs the next year, 2011, and what many feel, he was harshly fired, sacked after that. Hasn't been in the league since 2011, has spent time in England, USL, NASL. He comes back into the league next year. I'm interested to see what he does.
There'll be an expansion draft as well in November with these two clubs, so that's going to get going really quick. U.S. national team. Let's look big picture at U.S. soccer, obviously coming off.
Start with me.
I'll start with you.
Here we go.
The U.S. national
Can
team
we cut his mic right now?
This guy is coming off a loss to Ross's Canada. Where do they go forward into 2020 after obviously a disappointing 2019?
Well, they go forward by trying to beat the full-blooded Canadian national team on November 15th. Yeah. That's the Nations League next game. And I think for the Canadian team, if I can talk about them, there's unrest about how it was received down here, them beating the U.S., and they feel as though not enough credit was given to them. So now they have even more incentive to go out and turn over the American team again. And I get to that, Richard. I think there was a lack of desperation over some games with the U.S. national team, and how do you get that desire back where the Canadian national team, they have it, they have something to prove.
Yeah, you know, you and I see eye to eye on this. Canada didn't get enough respect, the U.S. didn't take them seriously enough, and I don't think it's a disastrous scenario they're in right now. They just have to step up. I'm talking about the U.S., but one of the debates that's going to start to surface is how to develop talent for the men's national team. And this has always been a debate as Major League Soccer has evolved and become a better breeding ground for players. And now that all teams have an academy and the academy system has been ingrained in this culture, you're going to have a debate as to where the young players in this national team are best served. You have the Weston McKennies, you have the Christian Pulisic's that are surviving, and more than surviving in Europe, they're thriving in Europe to greater or lesser
got a big
extent.
assist a couple days ago,
Against the semifinalists in Champions League last year. But you also have other players that if the results don't turn around for the men's national team, more and more people are going to be talking about, are these players in the best place to develop so that nations like Canada, nations like Panama can't catch up to the U.S. and make CONCACAF into more than well, CONCACAF's kind of a one-team region right now to make it into a greater crowd below Mexico.
Catch up. We've already caught up.
Canada's already caught up. Hey, we'll find out.
Wins one match at home.
Yeah,
That's
we'll
the
find
meme.
out in the return
That's the
match.
meme.
You only sing when you're winning.
What's up with that? Richard, thanks for coming on all season long, once a month, and on this season finale of Timbers and 30.
Yeah, it's great. We had a strong closing stretch here, guys. Looking forward to next year.
Much more of the same for next year. Collars and
Yeah,
V-necks.
go fund me a second sweater.
No problem.
Enjoy
I'll
your off
contribute.
season, Richard. We're going to head to a final break on Timbers and 30 in 2019. We'll be back for one final segment to wrap up the year.
Now back to Timbers and 30, presented by AT&T.
Welcome back to Timbers and 30 for one final time in 2019. As always, we've got to show last week's results in MLS picks.
As always,
Yeah, Ross took
there's
me
a
down.
winner and there's a loser.
Perfect. Ross was 5 of 5
Yes.
in the first round, and if the New York Red Bulls could hold on to a 3-1 lead,
See, now you know what
I
it's
would've
like.
beat Ross,
over there,
but-
don't you?
yeah, they blew the lead.
You're making excuses right there. We were going back and forth over text thread. Go on, Jim Curtin. Philadelphia Union, they pulled it off for me. But it's great first rounds of the playoffs with the games and the whole change in playoff format. It certainly led to a lot of dramatics around the league.
It has been super exciting and will continue to be so. And this is it for us in 2019. We'll be back next year. Before we go, we do want to thank everybody here at Fox 12 Oregon that helps us put this show together every week. Mostly our primary director, Terrence Connery, our primary editor, Michael Ober. And we want to thank all of you for watching at home every week. We so appreciate it. For Ross Smith, for Richard Farley, who comes on, for all of our guests that come on every week, the Timbers PR staff for what they do as well. I'm Jake Sivan. See you later. See you next year on Timbers and 30.
Thank you for watching Timbers and 30, presented by AT&T. For more on the club, visit timbers.com.